All right, let's dive into the great-grandmother heist. Uh, this story's got a light comedic feel, but I think there's something more going on here, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's satirical, the whole donut cartel thing, them trying to use mind control glaze, like a commentary on consumerism, maybe even how we worry about things having hidden agendas.
Right, and, well, let's start with Harriet Smithers. She's our protagonist, she's 76. She's a knitter. She's got alpaca, seems pretty normal. But there's that saying about still waters running deep. What do you make of her?
Well, she kind of flips our expectations, right? You think of grandmothers as being, sweet and passive, and she is sweet, but she's also fierce about protecting her alpaca bubbles. And I think she's capable of a lot more than we might expect at first.
Yeah, and that strength is definitely tested when she gets this mysterious letter from her cousin Mildred, who's kind of a wild card. And this is where the story takes a turn for the absurd.
Oh, absolutely. Like when they meet at that abandoned donut factory and Mildred is wearing this ridiculous disguise, it's so funny and it breaks the tension. But I also wonder if it tells us something about Mildred's past, you know? Like maybe she's had some adventures we don't know about.
Right, and then there's this whole reveal about the donut cartel using mind control glaze.
Hmm.
It's played for laughs, but makes you think about Waffleton, you know? Like, what does it say about the town that their mayor is running this criminal enterprise?
Yeah, is the author saying something about small town politics? Or maybe even power structures in general? The story never really spells it out, which is
Oh,
interesting. It lets the reader decide what they think.
that's a good point. And then we've got Steve, the conspiracy theorist, who comes in with these wild ideas about aliens and brainwashing.
Mhm.
Is he just there for laughs, or is there more to him?
Well, he definitely represents that skeptical side a lot of us have about authority. He might be a little over the top, but he makes us question things?
Yeah.
Like maybe there's more to the story than we're being told.
Okay, so we've got Harriet, the quiet but strong knitter, Mildred, the unpredictable adventurer, Steve, the outspoken skeptic, and then Bubbles, the alpaca with a nose for trouble. It's the classic unlikely team. But what makes it work so well in this story?
I think it's the contrast. They each bring something different to the group. It's like the author is showing that even ordinary talents can be really valuable, especially when you put together. It's kind of like a celebration of diversity in a way.
Yeah. And their first challenge as a team is to get through those secret tunnels under Waffleton, which I know you had some thoughts about.
Yeah, the tunnels aren't just there to move the plot along. They represent Waffleton's hidden history. All the secrets under the surface of this seemingly perfect town makes you wonder what secrets are hidden in our own communities, right?
It does, and then guarding those secrets, we have the donut cartel's henchmen disguised as giant donuts. It's a funny visual, but it also points to how absurd the whole situation is. Like how something as simple as a donut can become something sinister.
Yeah, it makes you think about like what we consider innocent. Right. I mean, even donuts can be used for bad stuff. Kind of
Mm.
makes you look at them differently.
Definitely makes me think twice about that jelly-filled donut. But okay, before we get too hungry, let's talk about Mayor Sprinkles. He's behind all of this.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on him?
Oh, he's interesting. He seems nice on the surface, even kind of fatherly, but then you see how much he wants control, how far he'll go to get what he wants. It's like a classic villain, but it's more complex because he's the mayor, someone people are supposed to trust.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you wonder how many Mayor Sprinkles are out there hiding in plain sight.
Mm.
But our heroes aren't fooled. They go after him. And that's when Harriet really shines, I think.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's so great when she uses her knitting to take down the villain. It's not like she's some superhero. It's just her quick thinking and her skill. It's a different kind of strength?
And it ties into that theme we've seen of using everyday things in extraordinary ways. The knitting needles, the tunnels, even the donuts themselves, they all take on this whole other meaning in the story.
Exactly. And it's not just the objects, it's the people using them. Harriet's knitting represents how resourceful she is, how she can adapt and solve problems. It's something we can all relate to.
That's a good point. And speaking of resourcefulness, we can't forget about Bubbles the alpaca. At first, I thought her karate skills were just a funny detail, but there's more to it.
Oh, for sure. It's not just a joke. Bubbles knowing karate shows how strong she is, how she can defend herself. And it connects to the idea that any skill can be useful.
Right, and her sense of smell, which is super important to the plot, is actually boosted by her karate training.
Exactly. It's like the author is connecting different parts of the story. It's like physical and mental discipline can lead to unexpected benefits.
So we have these ordinary characters, each with their own unique thing they're good at, and they come together to face this huge challenge. What do you think their success says about community?
I think it shows we're stronger together than apart. Each character brings something important to the team. They help each other learn from each other, and in the end, they win because they work together. It's an important message, especially now when everything is so individualistic.
And it's not just about fighting the bad guys. This idea of community is everywhere in the story, like how much everyone loves donuts and how they rally behind Harriet and her team. It's like the author saying that community is the opposite of what the cartel wants.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe the story is about going back to a simpler way of life where people take care of each other and resist those outside forces that want to pull them apart.
This is why I love these deep dives. We start with a fun story, and then we end up finding all these deeper meanings, ideas that go way beyond the story itself.
Yeah, it reminds us that even a lighthearted story can have something important to say.
And the great-grandmother heist definitely has a lot to say. But we're not done yet. We
Ah.
still need to talk about how Bubbles' special talent and those secret tunnels come together to save the town.
And how the experience changes our heroes, especially Harriet.
Yeah, stay with us as we finish up this surprisingly deep story. Okay, so we've got Bubbles, the karate-chopping, pastry-sniffing alpaca, and we've got these secret tunnels under Waffleton. It seems like a weird combination, but I bet you see a connection here.
Oh, definitely. It's not just random stuff. The author's smart about this. See, the cartel is using the tunnels to move their donuts around, right?
Sure.
But those tunnels are also how the factory gets air, like a ventilation system.
So the cartel thinks they're being all sneaky, but they're leaving a trail.
A scent trail, and that's where Bubbles comes in. Her sense of smell is amazing, and because of her karate training, she can track the mind control glaze through the vents.
It's like a secret map of the factory, but you have to smell it to find it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the author is playing with our expectations. We think the tunnels are just for smuggling, but they're actually the key to figuring out what the cartel is up to. Sometimes the most important information is right there, but we don't even notice it.
We got to learn to sniff it out. So Bubbles leads the team through these air shafts, using her karate to get past stuff and fight any guards. It's an action scene, but with an alpaca.
It's funny and exciting at the same time. You've got Bubbles, this cute little alpaca. Suddenly, she's like a tiny action hero, jumping and kicking her way through this factory.
And it all leads up to that showdown with Mayor Sprinkles. Harriet uses her knitting to catch him. The town is saved, and Bubbles gets a pretty cool reward. She becomes Waffleton's official pastry inspector.
Perfect ending, right? She gets to use her special talent to help everyone make sure nobody gets tricked by the mind control glaze again.
It shows that everyone has something to offer, no matter how weird it seems.
And it's not just about being good at something, it's about working together, recognizing what other people are good at, and using those strengths.
The great-grandmother heist might seem like a silly story at first, but look at all this deep stuff we found by looking closer.
Yeah, we saw how humor can tackle big issues, how everyday things can be used in amazing ways, and how community is what makes us strong.
It's a story that tells us to look deeper, to be open to surprises, and never underestimate the power of a good karate chop, especially from an alpaca who loves pastries.
And it makes you think, right? What hidden talents do we have? What could we do that's amazing if we just knew how to use it? How can we make a difference where we live?
That's something to think about, for sure. And that's our deep dive into the great-grandmother heist. Thanks for joining us. See you next time. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and remember, there's always more to discover than what you see at first glance.